Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez back again, and welcome to another, basically an instructional video about color and why sometimes your printer just simply cannot reproduce what you see on the screen. And I'm not talking about like a really horrible color cast or any of the sort, but sometimes you just don't see reds on your prints the way they appear on your monitor. In other words, they seem to be a little bit duller than they show up on the monitor, as well as blues and greens and yellows. Doesn't matter what color. Sometimes the monitor is able to show you a rendition that the printer simply cannot reproduce simply with its very limited set of colors. In some cases, only four: yellow, cyan, magenta, and black. It would be impossible for you to be able to blend those colors. Say you had a set of crayons and only four colors to deal with, you would not be able to do that either. Well, printers, even those who have up to 12 channels, often find it difficult to reproduce exactly what you see on your monitor. And I'm going to begin the demonstration by showing you the standard image that I always use to test everything. I'm going to show you why even the colors on the standard image cannot be reproduced the way you see them on your monitor. All right, so let's jump right in to the screen. By the way, my monitor has been calibrated with one of these. This is an i1 Pro 2 from X-Rite. Simply, I cannot do better than that. This monitor at the present condition is as best calibrated as it could possibly be. It's not a super high dynamic range or huge color working space monitor. It's simply an HP 24-inch monitor I bought sometime maybe 8 years ago, and it still works perfectly, and I can calibrate it absolutely neutral and absolutely color linear. In other words, RGB from black all the way to white is linear. It does not change in hue. So let's jump right in and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so here we are in Photoshop and I have the standard image open. And I want you guys to take a look at it, especially the region here, which is the neutral photo. And I want you to very carefully look at the brightest, whitest area and the darkest area and everywhere in between. And you should be able to tell that it is indeed neutral, linearly neutral. Now, without going into all of the aspects of what each one of these segments is supposed to do for you, I just want to tell you that a lot of these colors are simply impossible to print on paper. They're not impossible to display on a LCD display, but they are impossible to reproduce on paper because of the intensity, and not only that, the neon-like quality of these colors. And basically what this image does is prepares us for the absolute future in printers that someday may be able to reproduce this level of brightness and brilliancy and just plain old pop. So take a look at all of these here. These are transitions from fully saturated on the top to either black or white. All of them are represented. Again, just quickly take a look at this. Visualize it with your eyes as you are looking at this. And I'm going to go ahead and do a demonstration. I'm going to then switch to gamut warning mode. And on a Windows machine, that would be Control-Shift-Y. And as you can see, a lot of areas just turned solid gray. Off, on, off, on. Now look at how much of this region here just simply cannot be reproduced on print. Okay, and this is kind of a very overall sort of all-inclusive way to view this. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is the way, that these colors that are basically turned gray are not going to print. Sure, they're going to print, but they're going to be squeezed in. They're going to be kind of forced into a closer in gamut condition and maybe not reproduce the way you see them on your screen. So there you go. I want you to take a look at the area here, the dark areas of the strawberries. Now, most of the area of the strawberries is in gamut and it can be reproduced the way you see it. But these areas here are just simply too intense and very difficult for most printers. This does not represent a specific printer, folks. This is just a general calculation that the application makes. By the way, I am viewing this on Adobe RGB 1998. That's my working color space of the Photoshop application, but I did not apply that to this image, so it's unaffected. This image has not had Adobe RGB 1998 color space applied to it. I just want you to look at this area here. This is lava. Let's go ahead and turn it off and on. Notice the shadows. Those are the areas that just simply will not be able to be differentiated. So say there's an area here that's slightly darker than that area, or vice versa. It'll probably be blended as one tone. As a print, okay, you will not be able to differentiate between very closely matched total values. They'll just blend together. Look at here. This whole region here cannot really be reproduced the way the display displays it. Some areas, yes, you can. Some areas you simply cannot. Now, one particular area that is not affected by so-called gamut is black and white images. You don't have to worry about that. As you can see, nothing has been affected. Look at the yellows on these aspen trees here. Some of the bright colors simply cannot be reproduced the way you see them. Yes, they will be reproduced, but not to the intensity that you see on your screen. Take a look at this sky right here. It's a graduated sky, very gradual. Look at the orange of the rocks around that little window. We'll go ahead and check it. Only some areas, the shadow areas right here, just will probably blend with these here. See how they are actually differentiated. They'll just blend. You will not be able to have any kind of a separation of tones in that region there. And that sky will very likely also not have the transitions that you see on the image. Maybe yes, maybe no. Like I said, this is kind of a very global test. Let's do a more precise way to determine what will happen if I actually print this. And I'm going to go back to me because I want to show you the paper that I used and what I did to prepare for this particular demonstration. So I have here some A-sub photo paper. Now, A-sub is usually associated with sublimation transfer papers, but they also make really good glossy, absolutely sumptuous glossy paper. If you like glossy, I highly recommend this brand, A-sub. It's available on Amazon and also on my affiliate page. So take a look at it. It's very reasonably priced as well. Now, they also make a luster, I believe, in this same size. This is the max size that they offer, 11 by 17. They also make letter size and also 8 by 10, I believe. Now, I wanted to just simply use a simple printer like the XP 15000 from Epson. I went ahead and created a profile, which is really critical, especially since I am using PC inks, Precision Colors Signature Edition inks on that printer. Let's go ahead and take a look at the same image, but under soft proofing, rather than just that global gamut warning setting, which can be a little bit misleading in a way. Let's take a look really quick right now. All right, so in order to see this under soft proofing conditions, we got to go to View, Proof Setup, Custom, and then you will see this. So right now I have this profile that I created loaded. I want you to see what happens when I click on Preview. Let me move this out of the way here. I want you to take a look at all of this collage of different images, especially these right here. Now, remember on the other demonstration, they just kind of disappear. That doesn't really happen, okay? It does not happen that way. This is what happens. You see the difference? They look very bright and neon-like here, and they sort of become duller. These two colors are almost blended together. Whereas if I turn off soft proofing, you can see that there is a difference between these. Look at these right here. They're represented as a similar shade, but it's not going to be as bright as you see it. And the biggest, most often asked question I get is that my colors are not as intense as I see them on the screen. Of course they're not. They cannot be. They cannot be reproduced to that level of intensity on print. And we are using glossy paper, the glossiest paper I have ever seen, by the way. It resembles Canon Platinum Gloss, which is just sumptuous as far as glossy papers go. And look at this here. It's mostly almost, it's a color image, but kind of delving into almost a monochrome condition. Not much happening here. The shadows here are becoming a little bit lighter. That's what will happen. So this is more, look at the sky. This is more of what that combination of paper and profile will be able to produce. Now, you could look at this and say, well, maybe I can sort of adjust this and edit this. In other words, increase intensity in certain areas to sort of increase what the print may end up looking like. Well, that works, yes and no. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this image here. Now, this is an image that I created for my son. He loves all of this kind of subject matter. I'm going to go ahead and view it under soft proofing. And you can see that it changes a little bit. See that, especially right here in this region. But so far, just about everything about it, almost 95% of it, can be reproduced. It's in gamut. Now, notice this area here is a little bit darker than this region here. But when I apply that soft proofing, it just sort of becomes a lot more, say, equal in value. So the differences between this darker area and this lighter area here are sort of minimized. I want you to look in this region as well. You see right here, take a look right here. As I go off and on, it changes a little bit. Now, I could go ahead and turn that off and edit this. Make adjustments in, say, saturation. I can increase saturation. Make this a little bit more intense. That does not mean that I'll be able to reproduce that the way I see it, but you could do that. You can increase from nothing. This is what it was before. This is, set that to 0. This is without any adjustments. In other words, post soft proofing adjustments. You can do that as you go and maybe increase the intensity in some areas. Maybe that's what you want to achieve. And of course, you can also adjust the contrast slightly. And again, you can sort of override the dulling effect that soft proofing will apply to your image. And maybe this is what I will get when I print it. Okay, so I'll be able to override some of those effects. Let's look at the panorama that I just recently did, and we'll check that out again under soft proofing, custom. We'll see what we get is on right now. This is off, on, off. Again, not much change. Right here I see a slight lightening of those shadow areas, but all of the greens, nothing is going out of gamut on me or showing any vast difference in contrast or color intensity. So this is perfect to be printed on the XP15000 with this particular profile. I will get what I see. I will definitely get what I see there, because when I soft proof it, nothing changes. All right, so keep in mind that, no matter what you do, especially if you kind of over process your images, in other words, make them a little bit more saturated than you can possibly ever reproduce on your printer, regardless of make, you're not going to get a match. Sure, the color balance is going to match, but blues, violets, some bright greens, yellows, reds, oranges are simply not going to reproduce on paper at the intensity levels that you see them on your monitor. Okay, you need to soft proof. Use a custom profile if you have one available for that paper, like I do for this one, and I can get almost a perfect match of what I saw on the screen. And that's the beauty of soft proofing. Okay, that gives you a very quick preview of what you will see. Now you could also click on a box that kind of gives you what the effect of the particular paper will also add. It's a little bit unrealistic. It is actually exaggerated, so I never use it. I just want to see what the ICC profile, paper, and printer combination, also inks as well, will produce. And so that's the only way that you can really see what an image will look like when you actually going to print it, before you print it, in other words. So you really don't waste paper. Now, you might be shocked that some super bright oranges or reds or blues all of a sudden lose their brilliancy or vibrancy when you view them under soft proofing. But that is the way it is, and you kind of have to accept that. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now, they will come up with these super intense ink sets that will be able to tackle that region of colors like I show you with the standard images. All of those colors are out of gamut. The printer cannot reproduce them at all. I don't care what printer you have. You will not be able to do that. It'll fall short of being able to reproduce what the screen displays. Try not to over process your images. The one of the panorama, perfectly processed. And I don't mean to pat myself on the back. What I did was I stitched the 3 photos together. I set a black point and then I raised it to just above black. I set a white point and I lowered it just under white. And that's it. I did not adjust anything else. Okay. Yeah, I increased saturation a tiny bit, but I kept it within the capabilities of this printer's combination. XP 15000, a sub glossy paper, custom profile, and PCSE inks. That whole combination is what encompasses that custom profile that I created. Okay. So now, as long as my colors on my images do not exceed the capabilities of that printer, I will get a match of what I see on the screen, period. It's as simple as that, folks. All right, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And of course, as always, happy printing, everybody. Bye-bye.